The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, President of the Republic of Mozambique. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, President of the Republic of Mozambique, and invite him to address the Assembly.
Madam President of the 73rd session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, the Secretary General of the United Nations, heads of states and government, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is with a great honor that I take the floor on the general debate in this 73rd session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. We warmly greet Her Excellency Maria Espinosa Garces for her election to preside over this session of the General Assembly, which meets under the theme Making the United Nations Relevant to All Persons, Global Leadership, and Shared Responsibilities for Peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies. We would like to assure you, Madam Chairperson, full support of Mozambique as you discharge your mandate. We congratulate the outgoing President, Mr. Milosevic Laji, for the success, the remarkable success in his mandate, for committing to the mobilization of the international community for the implementation of Agenda 2030 on sustainable development. We would also like to express our appreciation to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, for the dedicated work that has been conducted in the leadership of the organization for the causes of peace, security, international security, and sustainable development. Allow me also to express my deep condolence, our deep condolences for the passing of Mr. Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations. Annan has honored Africa and the world with his devotion for global just causes. This assembly takes place also at the time when the icon for the fight for freedom, peace, equality, and fraternity, Nelson Mandela, would be 100 years. Nelson Mandela and Kofi Annan are two eminent personalities that should inspire us in our collective fight for a better world, peace, prosperity, security, and welfare of the people. Madam Chairperson, Your Excellencies, Mozambique acknowledges the role of the United Nations in promoting dialogue and in defending the principle of peaceful resolution of conflicts, which continue to affect peoples and nations which are behind violation of human rights and are also hindering a sustainable and inclusive development. The United Nations are a mother forum of a multilateral dialogue which gathers commitments of states in the context of implementation of globally assumed agendas and other instruments that focus on the achievement of shared objectives. An unequal and fractured world requires multilateralism to address its gaps. Progress made so far are an unequivocal proof that the sharing of responsibility is a global imperative, is an essential factor to build a peaceful, just and harmonious world. This is, for instance, the implementation of the Paris Agreement on climate change, the efforts with a view to eliminating nuclear arms, efforts to regulate and humanize migration so as to avoid humanitarian catastrophe. In the list of multiple examples, I would like to cite also matters related to human rights and good governance, peaceful resolution of conflicts, and financing to development, among others. In this regard, Mozambique supports the Secretary General in his efforts to reform the United Nations system, making it adequate to its purpose. Mozambique commends his inclusive approach in engaging the United Nations member states in each stage of the process. In addition to the ongoing reforms, it is urgent that we also accelerate those reforms of the Security Council, an important element which will go a long way in reaffirming the relevant role of the United Nations in searching for sustainable solutions for the challenges of peace, security, and that confronted humanity, the difficulties to reach consensus among member states of the United Nations to initiate negotiations on this limit. Also, the capacity of the action of the Security Council as one of the pillars without which the success of the implementation of Agenda 2030 will not be possible. These reforms will ensure that effectively the United Nations are relevant to all peoples, which is what we all cherish. Madam Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, on the peace and security, Mozambique continues to follow with deep concern the prevalence of flashpoints of political instabilities, of inter and intra-state conflicts, particularly in Africa and Middle East. We have closely followed the tension in the Korean Peninsula, as well as fundamentalism and violent extremism. Our country hopes that peace initiatives underway at a global level, as well as measures to contain recruitment and financing of a terrorist group, will result in opportunities to promote further the harmonious development of the people. The right for self-determination of peoples of Western Sahara and Palestine remains a concern for the international community. The lack of progress on the issue of a referendum on the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara continues to be a source of concern for the peace-loving peoples. We believe that the solution of the Palestinian problem is based on the existence of two states side by side in the light of principles of the international law, namely those related to good neighborliness, peaceful coexistence, dialogue, and tolerance. Mozambique, once again, joins the majority of states present in this hall in appealing for the normalization of political relations, diplomatic and economic and financial relations between Cuba and the United States of America. Your Excellencies, Mozambique has also dedicated efforts in removing obstacles to peace and in promoting inclusiveness and a conducive environment for equitable and sustainable development. The commitment to national and constructive dialogue enable significant strides towards resolving differences and building effective and lasting peace, which would go a long way in creating a conducive environment to strengthening national unity, reconciliation, and resumption of the economy. After I was sworn in as the head of state in January 2015, I decided to commit myself personally in searching for peace. I have committed because my country was and humanity were still targets of tragic conflicts which were promoting wars and were penalizing peoples. Fortunately, for more than 2 years, arms have has been silenced in my country thanks to the direct dialogue that I started with the late leader of Renamo. At this point in time, there is consensus on all we are doing, and peace is the best we have achieved as a president. As a result of dialogue, the Mozambican nation has witnessed in July this year the approval by the National Assembly of the amendment to the Constitution and the approval of the electoral law, which has introduced innovative elements in our efforts to decentralize the country with a view to settling conflicts, post-electoral conflicts, and deepening democracy. These firm steps in the political dialogue are an indelible milestone in the history, in the multi-party history of the country, as we intend to hold the next general elections without armed political parties, as it happened in previous cycles. Therefore, a process of disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration of armed elements of the opposition is underway. As a proof that Mozambique is for democracy, on the 10th October, we'll have municipality elections in 53 municipalities in the country with the participation of many political parties and associations of the civil society. Over the end of next year, general elections will be held in a setup that has been agreed by consensus, and this has been approved by the National Assembly. Due to the complexity of the matter in financial and technical terms, the government sees this solemn opportunity to thank the support and care of the international community, which is not built with the same ease that it was therefore to work for peace and reconciliation development. We appeal that more assistance be given to materialize the process of disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration of remnant armed elements that will begin very briefly. The Mozambican people is determined and to live in peace. The government of Mozambique is also committed to fighting organized crime that destabilizes and threatens our efforts for national development. We are determined to neutralize the groups of criminals that are attempting to cause problems in terms of order and tranquility in some districts of northern Cabo Delgado. Some of these measures against these criminals, we count with the collaboration of all, because these are crimes of a global character, and this which involve national and non-national. We should not think about democracy, we cannot think about human rights when the fundamental right of the man is is jeopardized, which is right to life. Mozambique assumes with profound sense of responsibility commitments in relation to the sustainable development goals. It is in this context that our national agenda for 2015 is aligned with Agenda 2030. We are convinced that in the implementation of these objectives, this will result in the creation of a more just, equitable, and solidarity society. These are the premises for the broadening of social justice in our country. Our government has made tremendous efforts for the implementation of its national agenda so as to create more opportunities for its citizens, particularly women, the youth, within the framework of the democratic dividend in our society, making the United Nations relevant to all persons. It presupposes not leaving anyone behind. This is a theme that is so important that it should not be neglected. Therefore, special attention should be focused on policies and strategies aimed at protecting the rights of the people, promotion of gender equality, capacity building of women, youth, and other vulnerable groups who are the majority of our people. social justice that we have referred to requires also the promotion of gender equality, an area where we have made significant strides at a political, economic, and corporate level. We have also undertaken efforts to increase access to basic services of health, education, water, and sanitation to all people. Another key element to determine the relevance of the United Nations for the people or the person is to ensure food and nutritional security, prioritizing agriculture in our national development strategy. Since we started this a new cycle of governance in our country in 2015 based on the mobilization of internal resources and the hard work of our people, we have managed to increase in a significant manner agriculture production, productivity and livestock. We intend this way to achieve one of the objectives of the SDGs, which is to finish hunger before 2030, which requires public and private investments in relation to the fight against corruption. Another scourge, our government has promoted measures so as to achieve good governance in all its dimensions, political, economic, and corporate. In this regard, we've adopted laws, policies, strategies to fight fiercely corruption. We continue to strengthen the institutional capacity and human capacity to ensure the application, the enforcement of anti-corruption laws, as well as sensitizing all social actors and institutions on the negative effects of this scourge, always respecting the principle of separation of powers that has been established. In the context of climate change, Mozambique, as one of the most exposed countries to this phenomenon, continues to take measures of adaptation and resilience within the framework of the Paris Agreement, which the country has ratified since June this year. We adopted a policy of conservation of biodiversity within the framework of. In this regard, we have dedicated 25% of our territory. At the same time, we promote the development of communities in areas of conservation, as well as their involvement in the protection and preservation of these valuable natural resources. We have fostered the use of renewable energies in rural areas, the sustainable management of natural resources, conservation of ecosystem, biodiversity, as well as sharing of benefits. We would like from this podium to appeal for international cooperation in financial and technological means for the strengthening of the capacity aimed at complementing our efforts. Madam Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to conclude our remarks reiterating the unconditional commitment of the government of the Republic of Mozambique to remain committed to the critical role of the United Nations in finding a solution to problems that affect humanity. The United Nations will always be the platform that brings together all of us in a collective commitment towards noble ideas on which this universal organization has been founded, serving future generations from the scourge of war and promote progress, social progress, and better living conditions and greater freedom. Let us continue faithful to these supreme ideals which are enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. Let us work together to build peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies. Thank you very much for your attention.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Mozambique for the statement just made. May I request the representatives to remain seated while we greet the Head of State.